Welcome back to the second video on Altanazda chapter 8 alpha. In this one we're going to talk about the form of the Greek participle and a little bit more about what the meaning of the middle participle means. If you want to learn about in general what participles are and what they mean, look at the other video from 8 alpha. So as I mentioned, we're looking at the present middle participle purely because Altanazda introduces that first and then introduces the active participle later. So let's look at how you make in Greek the middle participle. So you take the verb stem plus omen, and then you add the ending os et on. That means it's a regular old 2-1-2 adjective. I believe this is why Altanazda introduces this one first, because the middle participle is 2-1-2, which is the declension that you're most comfortable with at this point. So 2-1-2, if you recall, means that the masculine and neuter follow the second declension and the feminine follows the first declension. So let's make ourselves a participle out of luo, which means I loosen. So we're going to take the verb stem, lu, plus omen, plus the endings os et on. I'm going to write all three out separately, so luomenos, luomene, and luomenon, so that we can talk about accent rules. So just like every other 2-1-2 adjective, these are all nominative singular forms. The first is masculine, the second is feminine, and the third is neuter. So now let's talk about the accent rules. Fortunately, the accent rules for verbs are simpler than for nouns. So basic rule, if the last syllable, the ultimate, is long, you put an acute on the penult. So that applies to the feminine, luomene. And then if the last syllable, the ultimate, is short, then you put an acute on the antepenult, the third to last, which applies to our masculine and neuter, luomenos and luomenon. So just for another example, luo is a thematic verb, but let's look at an epsilon contract. So we're going to use philo as our example. Philo is how you would see it in a reading, but in the dictionary, they're going to give it to you as phileo, just to signal that it's an epsilon contract. The uncontracted version, phileo, helps us see the real stem, which we lop off the omega and we get phile. So we'll take the real stem, phile, plus omen, plus os et on. Now we're going to contract, so we're adding phile to omen, so we're going to contract the epsilon with the omicron and get u, so giving us philumen, and then add our endings os et on. Again, I'm writing them out separately so that we can apply our accent rules. So if the ultima is long, acute on the penult, so that applies to our feminine, and then the other one, our masculine and neuter, have it on the antepenult. So philumenos, philumene, and philumenon. So let's take a second to talk about what the middle participle means as opposed to, say, the active participle. The short answer is that in participle land, middle voice means exactly the same thing as middle voice means in indicative land. So if you want to go back to the appropriate chapter and review what the middle means, you can, but I'm going to do the same thing here. So a lot of Greek verbs simply have middle forms because they are deponent, which means that they've once upon a time in distant history, there might have been an active form in existence, but there is no longer an active form in existence. It's only the Greek middle form, which has an active meaning in the English. So one example verb that is deponent is pathomai. It means I obey. And the participle is pathomenos. So because pathomai is a middle voice verb, if we want to talk about obeying, we have to use the middle voice participle. Other uses of the middle were reflexive, so luomenos. Just to note that luo with just the upsilon means I loosen, but luo, it's hard to pronounce them differently, with the omicron upsilon means I wash. So luomenos means bathing. If you want to get the reflexive sense in there, it means bathing oneself, washing oneself. In English, we have a word for that, which is bathing. There was another meaning of the middle for one's own benefit. The sample sentence in that chapter was, carrying off a prize for one's own benefit. So that was in the middle voice. And then the last example was causative, and they kept using as the example luo, to loosen, in the active voice. But in the middle voice, you're causing someone else to loosen, which means ransoming. So last up, let's look at the forms. This is, I hope, an easy review slide, because as I mentioned before, this is a 2-1-2 adjective. So it behaves just like kalos, kale, kalon. The masculine and the neuter are second declensions, and the feminine is a first declension. So there's all my cases. There's all the masculine forms. You can review your second declension endings with the help of the back of the book. And then your verb accent rules I have just pointed out on the previous page. And then the neuters are also second declension. And then the feminines are first declension. So that's it for middle participles. I will see you all next time.